Good evening. I am Uththami, grade 11 English medium. Lesson explanation under the first lesson of the grade 11 textbook, which is a biology thesis, living tissues. All right, let's continue. What are we learning here? Well, we will be learning introduction for tissues, and then what's are plant tissues, and then animal tissues. But then this video won't help you to clearly give you a brief and then a clear explanation about what is tissues and plant tissues. Let's move on. Well, what is a living tissue? Well, let me say, as we know that group of cells that combine together form a tissue, and then group of tissues that form an organ, and collection of organs that create a system, and then create a collection of system that creates an organism as well. It's not in only an organism, but also a plant body. So we can clearly identify that tissues are a group of similar cells or collective of cells modified to perform particular functions in a living body. Well, it can be said that cells that have similar structures and functions and organized into various patterns to create tissues and perform specific tasks. Well, they are essential. Tissues are essential for the proper functioning of the body, and any disruption of the tissues can lead to a wide range of health problems in animal tissues. So as in plant tissues, it could be related, deficiency of growth, a proper growth, and a proper function in the plant body. So why do we need to study living tissues? Well, important is that because they form the building blocks of an organ, a plant body, systems which are essential for the proper functioning of the body and also of the plant body. Well, studying tissues help students like us to gain a better understanding of cell behavior and how the functions, how do they provide an example in the plant body, photosynthesis, so in animal body, reproduction and cellular respiration, where they confirms normal tissue appearance and function, and then confirms the complexity of tissue structures in the human body. Well, without tissues, the body would not be able to carry out important functions such as digestion, respiration, and movement, and also in the plant body for the transportation of minerals and food, which is simply known as the translocation. We will be learning that in this video. Well, as a conclusion, it gives us that tissues, which takes a main role in the function of the human and plant body. Well, as I have given the introduction for the tissues, so next, as I said, we will be covering plant tissues. So how can we be divided as meristematic tissues and then permanent tissues? Okay, hello, I'm Uththami. Welcome to this education presentation. Plant tissues. What are plant tissues? Well, plant tissues is a collection of similar cells performing an organized function for the plant. Each plant tissue is specialized for a unique purpose and can be combined with other tissues to create organs such as flowers, leaves, stems, etc. How? Well, let's dig in. But plant tissues can be divided accordingly, as they categorize according to the ability of cell division, and they do so according to the prediction of the plant body, and at last according to the functions they perform in the plant body. As I said, well, for in the above slide, you saw how it can be divided. So this is the categorization or the classification of the plant tissues. Well, the main part of the plant tissues, two main parts, is the meristematic tissues and then permanent tissues. As we said that, well, the plant tissues can be divided according to the ability of cell division and the function they perform. Well, meristematic tissues, simply we can say there is an active division. They can actively divide by mitosis to perform specific functions in the plant body. But in permanent tissues, it cannot, because there is no specific, they can't divide or specialize to perform particular functions in the body. So it's not that only these two parts can be, well, these two parts, if we further, specifically, if we consider these two separately, well, they do divide according to the functions they perform. Well, in meristematic tissues, but there are three main parts, because the growth of the plant, active, and the activity of it is because of this tissue. Well, as I said, of the growth of the plant, so as they can be divided into three main parts: apical meristems, intercalary meristems, and lateral meristems. So, as in permanent tissues, can be divided into two main parts as simple permanent tissues and complex permanent tissues. It is because according to the nature of the permanent tissues, the cells. So in simple permanent tissues, there are three main parts: parenchyma, collenchyma, and sclerenchyma. But in complex permanent tissues, it's xylem and phloem. Next, well, meristematic tissues. Well, what is meristematic tissues? Tissues with cells that divide actively by mitosis to produce new cells and to perform specific functions in the plant body are called meristematic tissues. As I said before, well, tissues that they can actively divide the cells to produce new cells. Now, as you see in this diagram, well, let me okay. Now you see here, this is a tip of the plant. And these are internodes, and then here you see the stem. So now, as I said, the growth of the plant active, or it happens due to this tissue. So on. Now, this is the tip. So as further, so these cells are differentiated. They don't have like many types of cells, only similar cells, but then, as I said, the growth of plant takes place due to this tissue. So here you can see in the slides like further explanation about the three main types of meristematic tissues: apical meristem, intercalary meristem, and lateral meristem. Well, apical meristem, here, see the tip. So it found in the root apex, oh, sorry, there is a repetition here, and auxiliary buds, but the plant increases its height due to the activity of this tissue. That means here the growth of, basically the length, that means the height. Okay, then intercalary meristem, they found at nodes. Here you see tiny parts of like tentacles, those are called nodes. And the length of those nodes increases due to this activity of the tissue. And these are found in plants of the grass family. You see in the bamboo trees and in grasses like the paddy wheat, I see that rice, they do have this kind of, small size nodes. It's because of this tissue. And then the lateral meristem. Basically, the lateral meristem is based on the diameter of the tissue, the plant, where simply it's based on the stem and the roots of the plant. You see the diameter increased. That means it gets like fat. So on. It's present laterally in the stems and roots of plants and found parallel to the longitudinal axis of the plant. The diameter of the plant increases due to this tissue. This is a microscopic view of the longitudinal section of the root apex. Features of meristematic tissues consist of small-sized living cells. No intercellular spaces or intercellular spaces are not prominent. There is a distinct nucleus in each cell. Absence of large central vacuole, but then small vacuoles may present. Absence of chloroplast and large number of mitochondria present. Mitochondria, as we know that in grade 10, lesson number 6, structure of the cells. So mitochondria is part of the cell. So as we know that the mitochondria is the energy source or the power source of the cell. Next, the permanent tissues. Permanent tissues, as I said, so the activity, the opposite activity of the meristematic tissues is known as the permanent tissues. That means tissues with cells that have lost its ability to divide or specialize to perform particular functions in the plant body. Well, they classify into two main parts because of the nature of the permanent tissue. How? Simple permanent tissues, complex permanent tissues. Simple permanent tissues, parenchyma, collenchyma, sclerenchyma. You see here the diagrams of the three specific types of tissues, and then the complex permanent tissues. Here you see some pictures. This is phloem and then xylem. Xylem tissues and phloem tissues, they have type of cells that they perform functions even in the these tissues. So in xylem tissues, xylem vessel, trachees, xylem fibers, and xylem parenchyma. Phloem tissue, sieve tube elements, companion cells, phloem fibers, and phloem parenchyma. Okay, now here you see some pictures. Like the microscopic view of the permanent tissues. But simple permanent tissues. Simple permanent tissues are composed of similar cells. They don't have any different type of cells, but then they do have only similar type of cell. Well, it has three type of simple permanent tissues. Why? Because of the shape of the cell and the type of the cell wall. Has parenchyma, collenchyma, and sclerenchyma. Here you see a further, well, if we get a closed caption here, see the cell wall and then the shape of the cell differentiate according to this. Next. All right. Now let's dig in and then learn further, more about the simple permanent tissues. First, parenchyma tissues. Tissue that forms the soft part of the plant body is the parenchyma tissue. Well, this tissue is the most abundant tissue found in the plant body. Here is the structure, the figure, a cross section and a longitudinal section of the parenchyma tissues. This is the nucleus. You know about the function of the nucleus. Well, we have learned in grade 10 in lesson number 6. And the thin peripheral layer of cytoplasm, large central vacuole, the thin primary cell wall, and intercellular spaces. So as this is the longitudinal section. Features of parenchyma consist of small-sized living cells. Cells are isodiametric, that means spherical, with a large central vacuole. There's a large central vacuole over here, you can see it here. And nucleus present peripherally in the cytoplasm. So here's the thin peripheral layer of the cytoplasm, and there's the nucleus. Cell wall is thin and made up of cellulose, and intercellular spaces are prominent. We can observe that intercellular spaces between each type of cell. It can be clearly seen in this picture. And then over here, the cross-section of the parenchyma tissues. Next, the locations of the parenchyma tissues. Locations, well, cortex and pith of plant stem, fleshy parts of fruits, leaves, or the mesophyll, pith and cortex of roots, seeds or in the sperm. Functions, photosynthesis, of course. Every types of cell, they do have the function called photosynthesis. And for storage, yes, storage of water and providing water. Collenchyma tissues. Well, tissue that provides mechanical support and strength to the plant body is the collenchyma tissues. Simply, this is known as the modified parenchyma cells. So here you see these are tiny, and then the cell wall is being thickened. You can't see any intercellular spaces in there. So as here the longitudinal section of it, there's no intercellular spaces. So if we just look on the features, they consist of living cells. Cell possess a cytoplasm, nucleus, and then a central vacuole. Generally, cells are elongated and polygonal in cross-section. The corners of cell walls are thickened. Intercellular spaces may present or may not be present. Locations. Collenchyma tissues forms a cylindrical tissue inner to the epidermis of herbaceous stems, veins of dicot leaves, and functions support, that means mechanical support to the plant body and their photosynthesis. Sclerenchyma tissue. The last part of the simple permanent tissue. This tissue can be differentiated from the other type of tissue. Well, you'll see. Well, sclerenchyma tissue as well, the common feature of every simple permanent tissue is they provide mechanical support to the plant body. So these tissues has two types of cells as sclerodes and sclerenchyma fibers. Further, we'll learn about this. Features. Here, the main feature, dead cells. In the before two simple permanent tissues, we learned that both of them consist of living cell. So lignin is deposited on the cellulose cell wall. We didn't see that in the before two tissues. So this could be another fact that could be differentiated from the other two type of tissues, where cells are tightly packed, therefore no intercellular spaces. Common to the before, we talked about colonychima, and then the cell wall is evenly thickened and form a central lumen. Here you see the lumen, lignified cell walls, pit, and then here the sclerids. Locations, well, fibers present in xylem are known as xylem fibers. We right now just learned that the sclerenchyma tissues has two types of cells, as sclerids and sclerenchyma fibers. So fibers are present in xylem and phloem, as xylem fibers and phloem fibers. Other than above, we can see it in plants as coconut fibers, agave fibers, and cotton wool. Which is made up of sclerenchyma fibers. But sclerids are found in endocarp of coconut, kanduru, mango fruits, and the pericarp of the guava fruit, and in pear fruit, and seed cord of coffee and dates. Functions, the common function is, we already learned as the definition, provides support to the plant body. Well, now, complex permanent tissues. Before we learn as simple permanent tissues, it was composed of similar type of cells. But here it is composed of different type of cells that forms together and then form a complex permanent tissue. So before we learned from the classification of the plant tissues, the xylem can be further classified into 4 types of cells. So in phloem, but xylem, there are 4 types of cell as xylem vessel, trachees, xylem fibers, and xylem parenchyma. And in phloem, sieve-tube elements, companion cells, phloem fibers, and phloem parenchyma. Xylem tissues. Well, here you see the 4 types of cells, and here's a close and microscopic view of the xylem tissue. Here the xylem parenchyma, the fibers, trachees, and the vessel elements. With xylem vessel elements. Well, let's see here. These are the vessels of the xylem tissues, which is known as xylem vessel element. With xylem vessel element, they are cylindrical. You see it here. They are cylindrical and elongated. And the elements stack on top of the others and cross walls are dissolved to form a continuous xylem vessel. Well, they don't have one type of xylem vessel element, but then it's been formed. You see here is a cross longitudinal section. It is been cut from, it's a part of the xylem vessel. So next, is a tubular structure helps in transportation of water in plants. A function of xylem tissue is transportation of water and minerals to the plant body, which are absorbed by the plant roots. Next, trachees. Here are trachees. Well, here trachees are more longer than the xylem fiber. But to get a close caption, the xylem fiber is being presented a bit far more longer than the trachees. So trachees are elongated. You saw in the diagram, spindle-shaped cells also help in the transportation of water. And then xylem fibers. They are shorter than the trachees. So narrower, shorter than trachees, and then commonly the xylem vessel, trachees, and xylem fibers, they're dead. Now, these 3 types of cells are commonly known as dead cells due to what? Due to the lignification of the cell walls. But in the last type of cell is the silent parenchyma is a living cell. We learned in simple permanent tissue that parenchyma is a small size living cell. So from that we can learn that silent parenchyma is a living cell. So they provide support to the xylem tissue. The collection of these four types of cells gives the support to the xylem tissue. And then here, so xylem parenchyma living cells with a thin cell wall, and they are involved in the food storage, food synthesis. So here, xylem parenchyma, tracheas, vessels, and xylem fiber. Next, well, commonly in permanent tissues, it provides support to the plant body. It's a function we can see commonly. And then phloem tissues. As we discussed the four types of cells in xylem tissue, so as in phloem tissues, they have four types of cells. As sieve tube elements, companion cells, phloem fibers, phloem parenchyma. In this diagram, you see this how it forms. The phloem tissue in a plant body. Here is a longitudinal section and then a cross section. Okay, and then so the sieve tube elements fuse end to end and the cross walls are incompletely dissolved to form a sieve tube. Here is a sieve plate, sieve tube elements here. And then the cross walls on this sieve tubes elements are called the sieve plates. Clearly here you see the cross section, this is what called sieve plate. And then sieve tubes transport food, mainly sucrose that's common throughout the plant as a solution, sucrose solution. And then companion cells, elongated cells associated with the sieve tube elements, together. A nucleus of the companion cells controls the activities of the sieve tube elements. But that's because sieve tube elements lacks a nucleus. And the sieve tube elements, companion cells, phloem parenchyma are living cells, whereas phloem fibers are dead because there's no lignification and then found scattered in the phloem tissue. So as before in xylem tissue, we learned that a xylem vessel element, tracheids and then xylem fibers, they are dead due to the lignification of the plant body, and then phloem and then xylem parenchyma are living cells. Next, functions. Well, the food synthesis in the leaves are transported throughout the plant body by this tissue, which is another name we can also identify as the translocation. So it's the end of this video explanation. Living tissues, part 1. We have learned here as a summary, we have learned how can we divide tissues as plant tissues and animal tissues. And then we learned, there was a deep thesis about the plant tissues as how can it be further divided as meristematic tissues and the permanent tissues and the functions of the meristematic tissues. How can it be further divided or categorized, and then so as in phloem tissue, in permanent tissues. So hope you have got a clear idea of the plant tissues. Well, I would like to provide this video explanation for today. Thank you and goodbye.